At dinner, my brother announced his engagement, and my father loudly declared, "This is what I mean, a son of whom we can be proud. Not like this poverty-stricken family that cannot keep a wife." Mom smiled. "I regret that we did not limit ourselves to one embryo then. It was immediately clear who would be the winner." Everyone, except the children, hooted and laughed. I calmly walked out. 6 months later, my father was kneeling in my house, begging for mercy. I've never been one to post my personal business online, but lately something's been eating at me, and writing it all out might help. My name's Alex, I'm 35, and I have a twin brother named Nick. We're identical, at least on the outside. But that's where the similarities end. Growing up, Nick was the golden boy. He was the one with straight A's, varsity letters, and invitations to every birthday party in the neighborhood. I was fine. Average grades, decent at sports, had a couple of close friends. I never really got in trouble, but I also never stood out, at least not in a way my parents appreciated. I can't count how many times I heard the phrase, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" It wasn't even said with anger. It was just a fact to them, like saying the sky is blue or water is wet. Over time, I learned to tune it out. Or at least pretend it didn't sting. I got married young, at 24, to my college girlfriend, Sarah. Things were okay for a while, stable, predictable. But over time, we started wanting different things. There was no big betrayal or dramatic fallout. We just drifted apart and decided to call it. That was a year ago. My parents barely blinked. My mom muttered something about not being surprised, and my dad asked if I'd finally start focusing on fixing myself. Meanwhile, Nick had been dating this woman, Laura, for a few years. She's nice, I guess. Polite, photogenic, good at small talk, exactly the type of person my mom worships. From the minute she entered the picture, she was family. More than I ever was. About a month ago, Mom sent a message to the family group chat, an invitation to a special dinner at their place. I stared at that message for hours. I wasn't going to go. I'd been avoiding family get-togethers for a while, just to keep my sanity intact. But something in me, maybe some pathetic hope that things might be different, made me say yes. The night of the dinner, I got stuck in traffic and showed up late. When I walked in, everyone was already gathered around the table. There was Mom, Dad, Nick, Laura, our older sister Emily with her husband and 3 kids, and a couple of extended family members I hadn't seen in a while. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and quietly slid into the far corner, hoping to keep a low profile. About halfway through the meal, Nick stood up and tapped his glass with a fork. Everyone hushed immediately, like it was rehearsed. "We have some exciting news," he announced, holding Laura's hand. "We're engaged." The room exploded in cheers, claps, and overly loud exclamations of "finally" and "about time." Even the kids were clapping. I stood up, smiled, gave him a hug, and said congrats. And I meant it. For all our differences, he's still my brother. It wasn't hard to be happy for him. And then it happened. My dad, already a few beers in, stood up with his drink raised high and shouted, "Finally, one of my sons isn't a total failure." He looked right at me. This one managed to keep a woman, unlike Alex, who couldn't even hold a marriage together. It felt like the air got sucked out of the room. I didn't know what to say. I didn't say anything. I just stood there. And then Mom chimed in. With a smirk. "We always knew which one would be the disappointment. Should have just gone with one embryo." And the worst part? They all laughed. Not a nervous, uncomfortable chuckle. Not the kind of laughter that trails off into awkward silence. It was genuine, belly-deep laughter. My 12-year-old niece pointed at me and giggled. Laura's parents, who were there for the first time, smiled politely. And Nick? He just stood there, expressionless, like he was watching a car crash but knew it wasn't his turn to jump in. This wasn't new. I'd always been the butt of the joke in our family. But something about that moment, the piling on, the timing, the joy they found in it, broke something inside me. Or maybe it finally woke something up. I sat in that chair for 15 seconds. I remember because I counted. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 15. Then I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and placed 2 $20 bills on the table. Just enough to cover my share of the meal. No speech. No yelling. No drama. I walked out. The first message came before I'd even made it to my car. Then another. And another. "Mom, Alex, come on, don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke. Dad, grow up. Man up. Come back inside. Nick, bro, don't take it personally. Emily, you're ruining Nick's big night." Again. I sat in the car, staring at the screen, and something flipped inside me. For years, I tolerated the digs, the jokes, the passive-aggressive comments. I kept showing up, thinking if I just tried harder, said the right thing, made enough progress, they'd finally respect me. But I saw everything clearly for the first time. They didn't see me. They never had. That night, I blocked every single number. Deleted them from my contacts. Removed them from social media. The only person I didn't cut off was my cousin Nina. She wasn't there that night and had always treated me with basic human decency. I went home, poured myself a glass of water, and sat on the floor in silence. I expected to feel angry. Or heartbroken. But mostly, I felt relief. And that's how it started. Waking up the morning after the dinner felt different. No text messages from Mom about how I should have been more grateful. No passive-aggressive memes from my sister about family always shows up. No sarcastic, helpful advice from my dad or smug updates from Nick about his perfect life. Just silence. I made myself a cup of instant coffee in my tiny kitchen, stared out the window, and realized that for the first time in years I didn't feel the heaviness in my chest I'd come to accept as normal. My lease was up in 2 weeks and I had already been thinking about moving. That morning I made it official. I packed up my place in 3 days, donated half my furniture, and signed a lease on a smaller apartment across town. Nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, a leaky faucet in the kitchen, and a stained carpet that had seen better days. But the windows faced east and every morning sunlight poured into the living room like a soft apology. I changed my phone number the same week, got a new email, updated all my accounts, and disappeared from social media. The only person who had my new info was Nina, my cousin, the one person in my family who hadn't treated me like an afterthought or a running gag. The first week in the new apartment was eerily quiet. I kept waiting for something to go wrong, for the next insult, the next guilt trip, the next comparison. But nothing came. And that absence, that stillness, started to feel like peace. With no more energy wasted on family drama, I had mental space for things I hadn't thought about in years. I signed up for a local gym. Not one of those high-end boutique places with eucalyptus towels and $14 smoothies, just a regular, slightly dingy 24-hour gym with free weights and squeaky machines. I didn't go to become hot or impress anyone. I went because, for once, I wanted to feel strong. For myself. I started cooking again. Nothing fancy, but homemade. I even bought a cast iron skillet and learned how to season it properly, something Sarah used to nag me about when we were married. I also reconnected with a few old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. Friends my family always rolled their eyes at. Those people are just holding you back, my mom once said. Funny how those disappointments were the ones who actually listened when I talked and remembered my birthday without a Facebook reminder. And then there was the project. For years, I'd had this idea for a small online store, handmade wood items, little decorative pieces, personalized gifts. I used to carve stuff as a hobby, but I'd let it go when life got too busy and Sarah started rolling her eyes every time I brought home a block of cedar. In the new place, with its creaky floors and nothing but time, I dusted off my old tools and set up a workbench in the corner of the living room. I opened a little shop on Etsy, nothing flashy, just a few items, and to my surprise, people actually started buying. Not a lot, but enough to make me feel like I wasn't completely useless. The first time someone left a 5-star review saying my handmade clock was the perfect anniversary gift, I sat down on the couch and cried. Not from sadness, from something else. Pride, maybe? Or the realization that I could actually build something that made someone else happy. Around the same time, Nina reached out. She asked if I had time to meet for coffee, just a casual catch-up. I hesitated. I wasn't sure if she was acting as a scout for the rest of the family or if this was a genuine gesture. But something about her tone felt real. We met at a little cafe near my new apartment. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in a week. Sorry, she said, sitting down. I've been meaning to talk to you. Things are not great on their side. I didn't say anything. Just sipped my coffee. Nick, she said, lowering her voice, has been cheating on Laura. Not once. Multiple times. She found messages from 3 different women on his phone. I blinked. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I absolutely did. Nick always had a wandering eye. I just assumed he'd grown out of it. The engagement's on hold, Nina continued. Laura's family is trying to keep it under wraps because they already put down deposits on the wedding venue. But it's a mess. She's not speaking to him. I shrugged. That sucks, I said, meaning it. Not because I felt sorry for Nick, but because I knew how it felt to have something you built start to collapse. And your dad's business, she said. It's in serious trouble. His biggest client dropped him. Like, completely overnight. Half his revenue gone. I sat back in my chair. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. It didn't feel good or bad. It just was. Your mom maxed out 3 credit cards trying to keep up appearances, she added. The engagement party? Cancelled. The vacation to Italy? Also cancelled. I kept sipping my coffee. Still no emotion. And they've been looking for you. Hard, she said. They went to your old apartment twice. Called your old job. Tried messaging Sarah. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Nina hesitated, then looked me dead in the eye. They need money. There it was. She pulled out her phone and showed me a message from my mom. Please tell Alex we need to talk. This isn't a joke anymore. Your father is under so much stress, it's affecting his health. He needs to grow up and stop being so petty. Family is supposed to help each other. I laughed. Out loud. Right there in the cafe. Where was all this family helps family energy when I was sleeping on a friend's couch during my divorce? When I needed $500 to fix my car to keep my job and they told me I needed to be more like Nick. When they mocked me in front of an entire table of relatives and laughed like it was comedy night. I looked at Nina and said, I appreciate you telling me. But I'm not going back. She nodded. I figured. I just thought you should know. We stood up, hugged, and she told me she was proud of me. The first time anyone in my family had said that to me ever. When I got home that night, I sat at my little workbench sanding the edges of a clock face and realized something. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the failure twin. About 2 weeks after that coffee with Nina, I ran into my dad at the grocery store. I wish I could say it was cinematic, like he turned a corner and froze when he saw me, but no. It was way more awkward than that. We literally bumped carts in the cereal aisle. I was reaching for a box of Raisin Bran and there he was, squinting at the store brand Frosted Flakes like they might give him a clue about how his life fell apart. He looked older. Not just older, worn down. His face was more gaunt, his hair grayer, his shoulders hunched like gravity had suddenly remembered it owed him interest. For a moment, we just stood there. Neither of us said anything. Then he cleared his throat and tried to go into dad mode. You being childish doesn't help anyone, he said, like the last 3 months hadn't happened. Like I hadn't walked away from a table full of people who laughed in my face. I didn't respond. I just looked at him, waiting. He sighed, dropped the tough act, and moved closer. Your mom and I, we miss you, he said, softer. It's been hard. Things have been really hard. Still nothing from me. Then he got to the point. We need your help. Financially. I didn't blink. I didn't even feel surprised. How much? I asked, mostly out of curiosity. 50,000, he said, like he was asking me to spot him $20 for gas. I stared at him. This was the same man who called me a complete disappointment in front of half our extended family. The same man who laughed while my mother joked about regretting keeping me. And now he was asking me for $50,000. I let the silence hang before saying calmly, I don't have that kind of money. He scoffed. Don't play dumb. We know you've got that internet business. He meant the Etsy shop. The one that had earned maybe $2,500 total. Like I was Jeff Bezos because I sold handmade clocks on weekends. I shook my head. No, I said. Family doesn't come first. Not anymore. I left my half-filled cart in the aisle and walked out. The next few days were quiet again. I figured they got the message. I was wrong. The following weekend, someone knocked on my door around 9 a.m. I opened it groggy, expecting a delivery. It was all of them. Dad. Mom. Nick. Emily. Even her husband, who always looked like he wanted to be anywhere but near our family drama. They looked like hell. Pale, tired, worn out. Like they hadn't slept or hadn't stopped arguing in days. Nick was wearing the same hoodie I'd seen on his Instagram a week earlier. Emily's hair was a mess. Mom's mascara was smudged and she tried to hug me the second I opened the door. I stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind me. No way was I letting them into my space. Dad launched into some rambling monologue about how family sticks together and how blood is thicker than water. Mom chimed in about how hard it was to find my new place, like that was somehow supposed to guilt-trip me into hugging her. Nick didn't say anything. He just stared at the sidewalk. Finally, they got to the point. Things had gotten worse, way worse. The business was going under. Their house needed major repairs. Nick had been sued by his old job for misusing company resources. Mom had maxed out more credit cards. Emily's husband lost his job and her family had moved into my parents' house. And cherry on top, Laura had dumped Nick publicly with a long Instagram post about his cheating. I stood there in my Star Wars t-shirt and slippers listening to them list all the reasons their lives were collapsing. And all I could think was, none of this is my fault. Then Dad got down on his knees. Literally. In front of our whole sad little reunion on my porch, he begged. Please. We need $100,000 to save the house and help with Nick's legal stuff. And they looked at me like I was the only raft left on a sinking ship. I took a deep breath. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Why would I help people who humiliated me? Who laughed at me? Mom started crying. We're sorry. We didn't mean it. Dad muttered something about jokes and alcohol. Nick finally spoke. We'll make it up to you. But there were no real apologies. Just deflections. Just sorry you felt that way, or you know how Dad gets, or it wasn't that bad. I told them I'd think about it. Asked them to leave. Eventually, they shuffled back to their SUV, which apparently they were 3 payments behind on. That night, I called my therapist for an emergency session. We talked for over an hour. And I realized I wasn't going to save them, not in the way they wanted. But I also wasn't going to cut them off completely. I'd spent enough of my life doing what they wanted. Now it was time for them to play by my rules. The next day, I invited just Dad over. He showed up looking like he was already halfway through spending the money in his head. I sat him down at my wobbly kitchen table and laid it out. If they wanted my help, real help, here were the conditions. 1. A formal, written apology from every person who was at that dinner, acknowledging exactly what was said and done. 2. Commitment to family therapy, at least 6 months, no exceptions. 3. Mom had to get help for her spending addiction. 4. Nick had to take responsibility for his legal mess without dragging anyone else down. 5. I would not be giving them money. I'd help restructure debt, make a budget, maybe assist in finding a financial advisor. But no handouts. Dad's face went through about 17 emotions in under a minute. Confusion, anger, disbelief, guilt, frustration. He called me cold. Said, family doesn't put conditions on love. I stood up, opened the door and said, that's my offer. Take it or leave it. He left. 2 days later, Nina sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post from my mom. It was a long rant about ungrateful children and how some people forget where they came from. Classic. But then something I didn't expect happened. Emily, my sister, called me. She was crying. Said she couldn't take living in that house. That her kids were starting to mimic the toxic behavior they saw every day. That she was sorry, really sorry, for not standing up for me, for going along with the Alex is the failure narrative because it kept the spotlight off her own problems. It was the first real apology I'd heard. And for the first time, I felt like someone in that family actually saw me. A few days after that conversation with Emily, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Grounded. Not hopeful. Not anxious. Just steady. Emily and I kept talking over the next week. We met for coffee, talked late into the night over the phone. She opened up more than I ever expected. Her marriage was on life support. She'd been hiding how deep in debt they were, and the pressure to appear perfect had nearly broken her. She admitted that letting me be the scapegoat all those years helped keep the heat off her, and she was ashamed of it. I told her I appreciated her honesty, and I meant it. It didn't erase everything, but it was a start. I offered to help her and her family get back on their feet, not with handouts, but with structure. I helped them find a small apartment and paid the security deposit. I walked her husband through building a proper resume and even put him in touch with someone I knew at a local firm. She agreed to start therapy, not because I pushed her, but because she wanted to change the pattern. Felt good. Not in a self-righteous, look how noble I am kind of way, but in a quiet, personal way. Like I was finally making decisions from a place of clarity, not guilt. Then, about a week later, I got an email from Nick. No apology, just a PDF of his resume and a message. Hey, can you put in a good word for me at your company? I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. I didn't respond. That weekend, my doorbell rang at 6:30 in the morning. I figured it was a package or a neighbor needing a jump. It was my dad. Alone. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just finally stopped seeing him as 10 feet tall. He asked if we could talk. I stepped outside and sat with him on the front steps. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he cleared his throat. I read what you gave me, he said. The list. I nodded. I've been thinking about it, he continued. And I realized you're right. I waited. For years, I treated you like a runner-up, he said. And that wasn't fair. I put all my pride and pressure on Nick and I blamed you for not being him. He looked down at his hands. Truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that if I admitted how hard you worked, how quietly decent you were, I'd have to admit that I never really saw you. That I didn't try to. He looked me in the eyes, and for the first time in my life, he didn't look like he was performing. I'm sorry, Alex. Not sorry you felt that way. Not sorry things got out of hand. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I sat with that for a moment. And then I said, if you want my help, the terms still stand. Full accountability. Family therapy. No shortcuts. He nodded. Okay. The next week, we started therapy. The first session was awkward. Mom tried to talk her way around everything, claiming she didn't remember some of the things she said at the dinner. The therapist cut through it fast, asking her to sit with the discomfort of what she'd done, and it was the first time I'd ever seen my mother speechless. Nick showed up late, sunglasses on, arms crossed. He sulked the whole time, rolling his eyes. The therapist asked him directly, "What are you here to repair?" He just mumbled, "I don't know." But Emily was all in, and surprisingly, so was her husband. They talked about the way the family dynamic had shaped how they raised their kids, how silence became survival. That alone made the session feel worth it. Afterward, I went home, made a sandwich, and sat at my still wobbly kitchen table. The same one my dad sat at when I gave him my conditions. I looked around my little apartment. Leaky faucet, peeling paint on the window frame, and a clock I'd carved the week before drying on the windowsill. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time, I wasn't ashamed of where I was, because where I was mine. 2 weeks later, I got a message from Emily. She'd found a budget class through a local nonprofit and signed up. Her husband got a second-round interview. Their kids were starting to sleep better. She said, "I think I'm finally figuring out what kind of parent I want to be. Not just the kind our parents modeled." That hit me harder than I expected. Another message came, this time from Nina. "I think this might actually work," she said. Slowly, messily, but for real. Then, last night, something happened that brought it all full circle. I got a video call from my dad. He was at their house. The background was cluttered, not staged. No performances. "I just wanted to tell you," he said. "I'm proud of you." I didn't cry, but I felt something break loose. Like a knot that had been there for decades finally untied itself. And here's the part that mattered most. I didn't feel like I needed that approval anymore. I wasn't doing this to be accepted. I wasn't healing to impress them or prove anything. I was doing it for me. My name's Alex. I'm 35. I've got a wobbly table, a small business that makes me just enough to scrape by, and a family that's learning finally how to show up the right way. But most importantly, I'm not their failure anymore. I'm not anybody's failure.